Welcome back to the Ink Sink. I'm Annie.
I'm Kaylee.
This is the publishing podcast for the rest of us. Doing it correctly this time.
Nailed it. God, guys. It's 2 years in.
We're doing really great. This is like 50-something episodes in, Kaylee. We're doing really well.
Even the greats have their off days, Annie.
I don't think we're having an off day. I do sound weird, though. I do want to apologize in advance. I was yelling all weekend, so I sound like, did you ever watch Friends? Did you ever see that episode of Friends when Phoebe had the cold? And she's like, I sound so sexy. I sound really sexy right now.
Yeah.
I also sound like I'm dying. I'm sorry, everybody.
Life is ephemeral, and it gives it meaning, Annie.
That's right. This is going to be one of those things where people, like, this is how they find out that we record in batches, is that my voice is just going to be like this for the next several weeks for them. And they're going to be like, oh my God, is she okay? Did she just take up smoking a pack a day?
Worse and worse.
This is my sexy voice, everybody. Don't judge me.
I'll just take you to a concert or something.
Oh, good. Yeah. For next episode. We're going to keep this shit going.
Absolutely.
And it's funny because then, like, my voice almost 90% of the time, other than this, will be totally fine.
Oh, yeah. Nope. Just concerts all the time.
Anyone meets me in person, they're just going to be like, what is going on?
Why are you like this?
Anyway, that's how I am. How are you doing, Kaylee?
I'm good. I'm tired.
Mm-hmm.
I was chatting a little bit about things that are going on. I just had a very eventful weekend. I thought I would have today off, but I did not. It's okay.
We're recording this on Indigenous Peoples Day, which is normally a holiday for everybody, but not for Kaylee, it seems.
Which is odd, because normally everything is a holiday in the industry in which I work.
You were telling me earlier, and we won't put your company on blast, but I do love a good corporate training story. Like, if you listeners have any good corporate training stories, send them in, because I want one that we can actually put on the podcast.
Yes, please. Please share.
Please share. If you want to, next time you go into a corporate training, just keep a little running tally of how many times someone says synergy, and just let us know, and then the winning synergy wins.
Yeah. Win our amusement and appreciation. All of you will, though. We're all winners then.
There's a podcast of Freakonomics. I don't know if you've ever listened to it. You don't really listen to podcasts, but there's a podcast called Freakonomics based on the popular book of the same name. And they did an episode on meetings and how much everybody hates meetings. And they had people send in their just like meeting horror stories. And there was this one where it was a corporate meeting, but they had like finished all of their talking points only like 10 minutes in, but they had booked the room for 30 minutes. And the guy who sent in the story was like, and you're not going to believe this, instead of just ending the meeting early, they went and found like a visiting performer who happened to be in the building to come perform for us for those last 20 minutes.
That sounds like a genuine nightmare.
Leaving the meeting early when they finished all their things. I was just like, that sounds ridiculous. I'm so sorry, man. I want stories like that. Please send them in.
Also,
I wanted to say it was like a clown or something that they had like booked for something, and he had been in there for like
forgive the wordplay, but that feels oddly on the nose.
I don't forgive your wordplay. I think that's ridiculous.
You're welcome.
Thank you. This isn't in the notes. I sent you some feedback in our notes, but someone said, I really love how much you two giggle in your podcast. And then they like looked kind of distantly for a second and looked at me like, you guys giggle a lot. I'm like, yeah, we're funny.
Look, if you've ever gotten any writing advice in the world, you've almost certainly been told to write for yourself, to create content, which is obviously, we live in a capitalist society.
Yeah, right.
I appreciate the thought behind the feedback, but you embrace that feedback, you get a show like this, which is incredibly niche, but we amuse the shit out of ourselves, and that's what matters.
It also helps we've known each other for like 10 years.
Oh my God, that's true.
We've been making each other giggle 10 years strong.
It's a long and storied history of making each other laugh.
If anyone thinks that we're like putting on airs for this podcast, no, this is literally like, we have such big theater kid energy. We just giggle like this all the time. Mm-hmm. This is just us. Welcome to it. Yep. You're part of us now. You can giggle.
This is the friendship.
We won't judge. However you're listening to your podcast, in the car, at the gym, where else do people listen to podcasts?
Laugh as much as you want. We won't judge. Other people might.
I won't.
But we won't.
Anyone who judges you for giggling is not someone that you want to be around anyway. And now you have that information because they've done it. So, move on. Speaking of feedback, Kaylee, we did get some feedback in our inboxes this week. One of our listeners wanted to make sure that all of the other listeners knew that he, again, who is a listener, was the one who came and fixed our toilet. Here at the house.
Also a very good friend of ours. A long-standing friend.
And thank you for fixing our toilet, Brandon. I genuinely appreciate it. The episode where we talked about how the toilet had just been fixed, for those of you who listen in regular time and are hearing this when it's coming out, was like a couple weeks ago. And after it came out, I saw him and he was like, hey, you didn't tell everybody that I was the one who fixed your toilet. Like, I didn't realize. I'm sorry.
We didn't know you wanted your name blasted on the internet. We'll tell everybody.
I did pay him for his labor. I don't want it to sound like I just exploited one of our listeners. But
do you even know who I am?
I did. He received many things in return, and I appreciated that. Yeah, no, it was fine. So, Brandon, thank you very much.
It was very, very kind of you.
Kaylee and I both use toilets in our lives, and so this was like a really big deal for us.
We have to stop this conversation right now. The internet is not a kind place.
Okay, fair.
But thank you, Brandon.
We do have other feedback. I was given the feedback that we had ruined people's childhoods by revealing that R.L. Stine might not have written all of the Goosebumps books. So I do want to say for clarity, if you do listen to Stine or if you seek out any of that information on the internet, Stine maintains that he absolutely wrote them all, but his publisher maintains that he did not, that there were ghostwriters on the payroll for several of them, and I do want to clarify that we don't think this is a bad thing. We have nothing against ghostwriters or book packagers. Like, I hope that for people who listened to that episode, you didn't feel like we were like shitting on any of these series. Like, we love books, we love series, and we love IP. Like, we're not going to come out here and say, oh, you used a ghostwriter, ew. Like, that's not how we feel. So collaboration, yes. Gatekeeping, no. R.L. Stine probably didn't write all of the Goosebumps books. I do have a couple corrections. So in a recent episode, we talked about, it was a news episode where we were talking about the Internet Archive and their fight against the publishers. And I said that the Internet Archive was paying for books the same way that Netflix is paying for content. And that's not quite true. They both pay for content, but the way that they pay for it is actually quite different. Internet Archive is buying physical books, and Netflix is buying licenses, and those pay structures are very different. I was just kind of talking faster than I was thinking. But the point that I make was that money changed hands, which is why we were talking about how the publishers were being kind of discreet, because money had, in fact, already changed hands. Another correction, I don't remember. This was in the book packaging episode. I talked about movie studios. And what I said was movie studios only make 1 or 2 movies a year. That is factually inaccurate. I'm sorry. Anyone who knows anything about movie studios knows that they don't make just 1 or 2 movies a year. They make like 9 or 10.
They'll have in different ranges.
Yeah, but the point that I was trying to make is that movie studios make significantly fewer movies than book publishers publish books. And that still holds true. Book publishers publish dozens of books a year, and movie studios publish 10 or fewer. So that was the point I was trying to make. Sorry, everybody. On my defense, I was very hungover that day. Kaylee, do you want to jump into the news today?
Yeah. Annie.
Yeah.
Words.
Hell yeah! So for those of you who haven't...
just words that have existed, that have been, codified.
Yeah, so for those of you who haven't listened to our show for since season 1, dictionaries, we talk about this all the time, they pride themselves on being descriptive rather than prescriptive, so they're not telling you how you should talk, they are simply codifying how people already talk. So dictionary.com, which is an American dictionary and like a pretty good proxy for whatever's going on the internet, just dropped a bunch of new words. My link isn't opening, Kaylee. What new words have dropped this year?
So they've codified some words. John, which is apparently a Philadelphian term.
To mean what?
Something or someone for which the speaker does not know or does not need a specific name.
Oh, okay. So it's just a thing. Like that John over there talking about like a groundhog or something.
Yeah, anything. Or like, give me that John, and you're pointing to like your pen or a notebook.
Interesting.
Or a candy bar, I guess. Something you can easily point to.
And that is actually spelled Jawn, which I think is really interesting. My link finally opened. So dictionary.com also added like usage notes in here, which I always appreciate, but it didn't really need any for Nepo baby. For those of you who are chronically terminally online like I am, Nepo baby has been
everywhere.
A big thing in the discourse lately. I think The Cut put out this like huge roundup of current famous people who are Nepo babies for whatever reason. A Nepo baby, for those of you who don't know, is a celebrity with a parent who is also famous, especially one whose industry connections are perceived as essential to their success. So basically like people who are using like their parents' agent or something to get in on the movie business. And some famous ones are like Dakota Johnson and Kate Hudson, who I feel like are, actually good actors in their own rights. Like, I don't feel like we need to be using Nepo baby in a negative way, but a lot of people do.
I mean, to be fair, there are a lot of words that aren't innately negative, but have a negative connotation. Like, technically, like, disillusion has a bad connotation, but it's not. But if you were to, like, look it up, you're just removing the illusions of X, Y, or Z.
That's a good example, for sure.
One of my favorite words that were introduced, Blur's Day. I feel that deeply.
Blur's Day.
Blur's Day,
it's just a blur. Yeah, time means
Wednesday,
nothing.
whose day? Yep.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I still, like, when the pandemic started, I was very much like, what does time mean anymore? And I'm still like that. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, is today Wednesday or is today Blur's Day? Who knows?
I thought that was really good. And then my other one that I really liked, I actually just really liked hallucinate. In the context of AI, I just really enjoyed that term. I thought it was really a very smart way to discuss the phenomenon.
Tell us what an AI hallucination is.
So it is when the innate data model becomes corrupt because it only keeps so much. And then errors become magnified. It starts projecting false data, false conclusions. Things are not shaking out like they should, And so that is just a fascinating way to use the word.
I remember
really liked it.
When we did our AI episode, you were talking about this. You didn't use this language, but it was basically this. Your favorite one was this AI citing scholarly research that didn't actually exist.
It's so good. Like, that was so fascinating. And that was like, I just loved it. I loved that a lot, actually.
There were some in here that I found like were really hard hitting, like greenwashing, sports washing, crypto-fascism, sextortion.
I do like crypto-fascism because that let me know. I thought genuinely when I had encountered it that it was about cryptocurrency. And now I just realized, it's like quiet, hidden.
Yeah, crypto.
I was like, oh, okay, fair enough. That also
like cryptography,
too.
like secret.
I had heard them like together, and I was like, all right, I guess that makes sense.
Some of these are also really funny, like the shower orange. I know you're not really on TikTok, but had you heard of the shower orange before?
So my husband introduced me to shower beer, and I was like, reading. I was doing my research for this, and I was reading all of these new words, and I was just like, hey, babe. Did you know about the shower orange? And he was just giving me so much shit because apparently I didn't know about this and how refreshing a shower orange is. He's like, yeah, it's just like a shower beer. I was like, no, they're very different.
All right, I'll do my last one and then you can do your last one. So my favorite one is Gay Mary, which is one of those things where people who are against homosexual people in general will say, I'm against gay marriage. And then like the common like jokey retort is, well, then don't get gay married. And then we've kind of like backronymed that into saying, why don't we gay marry? Yep. Let's get gay married.
Yep.
I love that.
You know what? Taking it back.
Yeah, exactly. All right, what's your last one?
This is just such a fun, incredible word.
Okay.
Mount Weasel. I just love it so much.
What is it?
Mount Weasel.
Mount Weasel? What does it mean? I'm scrolling through. I can't find out what it is.
It's okay. I'll tell you. And I just love it also because of what it is, which is, I'm going to read the definition. I had actually encountered this before. I just don't know where on earth I would have. But it's a decoy entry in a reference work, such as a dictionary or encyclopedia, secretly planted among the genuine entries to catch other publishers in the act of copying content.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And then, yes, we've got some. No, we're not going to tell you what they are.
I love this because this is one of those things that you find in, like, cookbooks and maps and stuff. Like, you'll find like a phantom city or like a phantom road, or like in a cookbook like a weird spelling of an ingredient, and it'll be like, this is how we know people are copying our stuff, is if this weird spelling or this fake road ends up in something else. And I absolutely love that.
It was probably, I'm pretty sure it was something in a lawsuit with like a major publisher with Google or something for theft, and it was like, hey,
oh, I'm sure, yeah,
100%.
Like, we can prove this. Yeah, it's so cool. Moving on, book blurbs. So, like, the blurbs that you get on the back of the book. Normally, I'm annoyed with them just because when I'm looking at the back of a book, I want like a summary of the
want
book
the summary
to
of
figure
the
out
book,
what yeah. But this is a problematic book blurb on the cover for a totally different reason.
Oh my gosh.
So for those of you who have never heard of Jordan Peterson before, it's actually kind of important for us to go through this. Jordan Peterson is a conservative commentator. He didn't start out that way. He started out as an intellectual psychological commentator, but now he's kind of veered into saying things like, you know, women only like alpha males and that sort of thing. And I'm just going to kind of stop there so that we don't go all the way into...
This isn't a Jordan Peterson episode.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. But Kaylee, what is Jordan Peterson doing with his book blurbs lately?
Causing so much drama that a new ethics standard is being stood up. Like, I cannot stress enough.
You always want your legacy to be like a new ethics standard.
So awful. That collectively people that don't like to be censored are like, we need to deal with this somehow.
It's not even censorship, it's just like factual inaccuracy.
No, it was absolutely garbage.
So he was taking like these, it wasn't like literally 1-star reviews, but they were negative reviews of his book, and then cherry picking the words to such an extent that the words that appeared on the blurb were like some of Jordan Peterson's best writing. But in the review, it was like, this book sucks. Some of Jordan Peterson's best writing is only in this chapter 4. And, and so he's taking these words so far out of context that it is genuinely comical. Because what ends up on the book is like, if you didn't know the context, was like a positive review. But no, in real life, a negative review.
Quite negative. This article goes into it, like the reason.
Yeah, this one comes to us from The Guardian.
Right. Ella Creamer.
Yeah.
So basically she gets into the reasoning behind the new standards. It's not just that, you know, he's being a douchebag and trying to make money, but it's also misrepresenting and ultimately will impact people from that review. Mm-hmm. And they'll stop reviewing things. And then it will stifle discussion and actual honest connections. And
I think there is a real, like, this is dishonest aspect to this that I think it's important to genuinely point out, other than us just making fun of Jordan Peterson. Like, he was being extremely dishonest with those book blurbs. Intentionally so. And, like, there are some times where, as a joke, we'll publish, like, a 1-star review, but with the context saying, like, this is what we are going for, is this person didn't like it, but we think that the fact they didn't like it is a good... Like, we talked about the 1-star review on the t-shirt.
Or 2 stars. It was 2 stars. They had chairs.
Yeah, right. He was like... a couple episodes ago, we talked about this guy who gave, like, a 2-star review of a bookstore because they had, like, a woke display of liberal values. And they put that 1-star review on a t-shirt in full because they're like, we want people to know that we have liberal values in our bookstore and chairs. And
it was very good.
You can go back and link. I'll link that in the show notes. But basically, what Jordan Peterson was doing was not that. It wasn't like him taking like a satirical view.
Liberals hate my books.
Yeah, no, he was basically taking words so far out of context that they were becoming the opposite of what they had intended to say. Like, this person was intending to say that Peterson was not a good writer and that there was only so much redeeming value, but Peterson was saying there's a lot of value and he taking that review out of context and saying there's a lot of value on the cover, and it was very disingenuous. And so this article is actually about the Society of Authors calling for new guidelines on book blurbs, and specifically talking about, it says, after several critics complained of being quoted out of context on the covers of Jordan Peterson's new book, the industry body has spoken out against that practice. And I think that's probably a good thing. I don't know why they didn't have those guidelines before, if I'm being totally honest.
Yeah.
Also, I just noticed that your shirt says Electric Bear Glue and it's got a bunch of bears.
Yeah. They gotta go get some hats, though.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Sorry. We're talking about Jordan Peterson.
I think we finished. We've said enough. We don't need to give him any more attention.
Moving on. For those of you who don't really like being on the internet, and talking about books. Well, welcome, because,
how did you get here? But also thank you.
We do like being on the internet and talking about books. If you're not really on like the Twitter / Instagram / Tumblr social media conversations, we're here to tell you what those conversations are right now. And right now, there's a lot of making fun of Vulture as a news outlet because they put out an article called, let me get this title correct because I actually don't have any issues with it, but I want to make sure that because we're being slightly negative on it. From friends to lovers, the fanfic to romance pipeline goes mainstream. And it references things like My Roommate is a Vampire, Forget Me Not, The Love Hypothesis, and What Monstrous Gods, written by people who were very open about the fact that they were writing essentially fanfic with the numbers, with the serial numbers filed. What is the
serial numbers filed off?
Serial numbers filed off. Thank you.
So let me just be clear. Like, one of my favorite authors got her start in fan fiction, Star Trek fan fiction. And she actually leveraged that and became an author for Star Trek novels. Diane Duane, fantastic. And she wrote the Young Wizard series. So, like, it's not new. And also, again, a lot of Star Trek and Star Wars, from the Star Wars Extended Universe and Star Trek, the massive novels that have come out for that series, were written by fans that started in fan fiction, or as fan fiction even in many cases. Like, it was the frontier back in the day. Like, it's not new. It's so strange. Like, what a weird, this feels like it was written by somebody that was a little young and everything is new and done by that generation.
But also, like, maybe not, because we talked about this on our show, I want to say last year when 50 Shades of Grey turned 10, which famously was Twilight fiction. There was an interview published around the same time. I want to say it might have even been in the article that we referenced in that episode about like the legacy of the Twilight fanfiction writing community and how very, very, very many authors who are writing romance, contemporary or romance today, started out in the Twilight fanfic universe, and that they know that. But apparently not a lot of other people do. So this, famously, The Love Hypothesis, they reference this one a lot, was based on a Reylo fanfiction. For those who don't know, Reylo is like Rey and Kylo Ren from the most recent Star Wars series, or the most recent Star Wars movies. No, it's not even the most recent. Oh God, the sequel trilogies. I don't know what we call it anymore. There's been so much Star Wars lately.
That's true. That's true.
You're the Star Wars moderator. What do we call it?
It is the last big movie series.
It is the last big movie series.
It's all,
the last trilogy.
TV shows at this point. It hasn't been
true.
Movies.
Well, Rogue One came out somewhere in there, I feel like, and Solo.
It was before that.
Did it? Okay. Anyway, so the sequel trilogy, which had Rey Skywalker and Kylo Ren, child of Han Solo and Leia Organa. So basically, Vulture's been getting a little bit of heat for this. I don't think it's totally necessary, but basically, it seems like Vulture is very much on the back foot a little bit of finding out that the fanfic community continues to write, even when they're done writing specifically fanfiction. I thought that this was like extremely common knowledge, but apparently this is like one of those things that's kind of going more mainstream, which I have to say I'm not mad about. Like, people understanding that fanfiction writers can actually be commercial writers as like an open thing. It used to be like, I don't know if you remember this. My formative fandom years were on DeviantArt, but like when people would start deleting their fics, it was because you knew they were trying to get an actual book deal. That was happening when I was in my teens, and that was 20 years ago. So I feel like this has been going on for an extremely long time. I mean, social media itself is 20, 30 years old at this point. Like, we can't pretend that this is new, I feel. Well, Vulture can apparently, but the rest of us can't really.
No, you're not wrong. And it's interesting that it kind of talks about that. It's a different experience trying to take something because, like, novels have a different vibe
than fanfic. Absolutely.
They do. And there's a different structure.
Mm-hmm. The fanfiction audience has different expectations than the general fiction audience.
Sure. They're really there to indulge in the IP and the characters typically.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you're there for the journey. So you want certain things out of your book reading experience, but you're there for the arcs. And there's certain things that you expect out of, for example, a romance novel.
Yeah.
That, we assume at some point we're going to get something along those lines in a fan fiction, but like, we'll get there when we get there kind of deal.
And we're not being prescriptivist. We're just talking about trends and what people tend to expect.
Yes. I would not necessarily want to try to rewrite any of my massive, like, beasts, like my 60,000 nonsense Tron fan fiction for anything else, because that is, I don't know what I would do, Annie. I genuinely don't know what I would do to make it something else. Like, and that's something that some of the authors, like, they got some quotes from some authors that had made the jump, and they're like, it was so much harder to convert my WWE fanfiction to like law enforcement or something. I can't remember what they said.
And then especially because like the trope idea is definitely different outside of IP. Like you approach it differently in an IP as an audience member. The expectation is going to be super different if I see like a trope tag of like why choose versus if I see a trope tag of why choose on a regular romance novel. There's going to be a little bit more angst. I expect a little bit more angst, I should say, in like a fictional romance novel versus a fanfic. Like there's so much less angst.
Well, yeah, I feel like in general you're likelier because you assume there's more flexibility and more openness amongst like you're going to go back maybe to the tags or something and double check, but you're likelier to assume this is a polyamorous story than to assume that this is a love triangle.
Good point.
Gone wrong.
Good
basically.
point. And also that's something I hadn't even thought about is there are tags in a fanfic story almost by design.
Everything's online.
But on like romance novels, they're still kind of coming towards like categorizing their books in that way. Like I feel like these days I'm more likely to see, you know, the title : a novel : and then like a why choose romance or a supernatural romance or like maybe like a main tag.
Wait till
sort of
we get
there.
to the anime naming for novels, and then we'll just have the entire summary in the novel.
Yes, perfect. I'm
my
bureaucrat.
My CEO boss's handsome son is a jerk. Why am I attracted to him while we go to our European conference or something like that?
Right. And then those fans will just unabashedly like turn that into an acronym, and you're just like, well, what?
What word salad
this?
when you're talking about this later? Sorry, guys. It is funny. It is funny. As somebody that has tried to scroll through like Crunchyroll or Hulu,
for sure.
like an anime section. Like the trend is hard.
I mean, it's not even anime. Like honestly, ACOTAR is already too long.
That's true. Yeah.
Asoif, not into it.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, that's A Court of Thorns and Roses, right? A Court of Thorns and Roses and A Song of Ice and Fire.
When you have to start like putting words on your fingers to make sure you're in the right order, it's a problem.
It truly is.
It's a problem.
So tired. Anyway, so more trend discourse. Actually, speaking of social media, Mashable had this little roundup of this really interesting trend of novels specifically about social media in our daily lives.
I thought that was so interesting.
As like a little micro trope that's been going on. And I think that that's really, really interesting. I think that actually falls more in line with this, fanfic writers moving into the more general audience space, because when we talk about like people who grew up with social media, we're not generally talking about like your image of an author toiling away with gray hair on their typewriter, right? We're talking about people from today. And I think that that's something that we're probably going to see more of. Like, I definitely remember when I was a teenager, like when I was kind of phasing out of being a teenager or phasing out of YA books, we were kind of finally getting like books that featured cyberbullying. And that was like, I mean, the way that they were like cyberbullying in those books was not quite the way that cyberbullying was actually happening in the real world, but I felt what they were going for there. And so like, I'm glad to see now. I've not really read YA a ton since then, but that it's like kind of grown up as a genre. I know that you read YA just a little bit more than I do. Have you seen this come up more? I know you read more fantasy, but
yeah, that's my thing.
Yeah.
Very sparsely and sadly, sometime I will be able to pick the written word back up.
One day you'll read again. You've only got a podcast about books. There's no guilt.
Get back into the word mines and mine some more words.
Mine some more words.
So it is like I feel like we're seeing what this article is describing is not even necessarily so much concerns. It's just like the integration of technology into the characters' lives. And I'm curious to see how that will shake out as far as, because we've talked about this in like TV and movies and them being dated by like how they've integrated or chosen to leverage technology and emphasize different things.
Like everything that mentions Twitter is now out of date.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So like it's interesting to see, one, this in general, and then two, just to kind of watch how people ultimately take account for that so that their works have a little more longevity.
Mm-hmm. I think it was really interesting. So we're going to put that in there. That one's from Mashable. And the other major discourse happening on the internet. This poor girl, like, it's not her. She's not even a girl. She's an adult. Like, this poor woman. She's doing her best. Okay, so we talked about, on a recent episode, we talked about book packaging. And again, we talked about at the top of the show, we have no issues with ghostwriters. I am an editor. Collaboration is key with me. Kaylee, you're more of a solo worker. But if you ever wanted me to edit your shit, we can collaborate.
Maybe I'll make you edit my very silly story that I'm going to write for November.
I'm ready for it. But so Millie Bobby Brown, who is most well known for playing 11 on Stranger Things, released a novel.
Or Enola Holmes.
She also played Enola Holmes in the Enola Holmes series.
I also love.
I have not watched Enola Holmes. I'm so sorry.
You never watched it? It's so good.
But for the record, Stranger Things was like the number one show.
No, you're not wrong.
Netflix,
but I also just really liked this one better.
I did love. I saw a roundup of the costume design in Enola Holmes. I did think they did a really amazing job for what it's worth.
If you would ever get around, if you have the time, like, it's fun. I think you'd enjoy it.
I will. I mean, you can see my to-do list. It's kind of a problem.
You're reading books. I can't.
This is what I can read books or I can watch television. I can't do both. I'm sorry. Can't do both. Anyway, so she had a ghostwriter, and people have opinions about this. I posted this roundup from the Today in Books Substack, which is written by the fantastic folks over at Book Riot. They don't use bylines, so I'm not totally sure who wrote this one. But if you are interested in more Book Riot news, they have a podcast called Today in Books, and both of the people who write this Substack are on there, so we can just go credit them. Whoever hosted Today in Books and talked about it. So Millie Bobby Brown wrote this book. It's already been optioned for a TV show, which, props to the team there. That's awesome.
If you have a solid core, idea for the story, I mean, that's kind of what you need. Yeah, and I think it was really sweet. This was described as, it's she was in this story is similar to, her grandmother's story. And I think that was really sweet that's what she wanted.
And I think that's true. I think that's factual. I don't think that's one of those things that they just came up with in marketing. I think it was genuinely something that was reminiscent of her grandmother, which is awesome. Again, we have no issues with ghostwriters or collaborators or anything like that.
But
we think that's really cool.
There is some drama about it on the internet.
Yeah, of course. So a lot of people, much like the people who are like, oh, I didn't know and am now disappointed at the fact that all the Gossip Girl novels were not written by the same person. So people are like, oh, she didn't even really write it. She didn't. I'm being mean, but also, come on, people. You don't have to just jump on anybody who is just doing a thing. She also didn't write 11 from Stranger Things or Enola Holmes. She's most creative endeavors are collaborations. It's not a bad thing.
The fact that her name is on the cover is to help get probably spotlight on a story that she wanted people to read.
Yeah, absolutely.
This was a story that she wanted people to read because she thought it was sweet and it reminded her of somebody that she loved.
Yeah.
She didn't put only her name on there.
Right.
Whatever you think of the quality of the writing, which to be fair, there was some, I feel genuine criticism about that.
I hadn't read the book, so I can't really say one way or another, but yeah.
Some of it didn't seem necessarily mean-spirited. It was just saying, hey, I thought this writing could have been improved, basically.
And I think that was part of my issue, is that a lot of it was seemingly just mean-spirited, because they just it's, and I understand on a certain level, this is something that comes up in podcasting spaces too, where a celebrity will start a podcast and immediately have 9 million followers, and the podcasters who have eked out a much smaller following but put in so much work, they're it's not fair. And it's I mean, I guess if your definition of fairness is that everyone immediately gets 9 million followers on their podcast, but that's a weird definition of fairness. If your definition of an author is someone who toils away on their typewriter, sure.
Starving.
Right. But that's a weird definition of an author, in my opinion. So I thought that this discourse was a little bit silly, but there's a lot of other really interesting discourse happening out there.
I wasn't too upset, or I didn't necessarily think less of Millie Bobby Brown
or her team.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, so many worse things have gotten published by reputable publishing houses or optioned into movies or TV. So many worse things. If this is the hill you want to die on, I guess more power to you. But I don't got the energy or the time.
What a weird hill,
It's a weird hill.
Such a weird hill.
I don't get it.
Also, The only time I think that we've ever been negative about like a collaborative person under, like a collaborative group under a single byline was that one time when, just because the concept was so funny, that Spanish writer that turned out to be 3 dudes. And they thought, like, they were writing under a female coded name, and it turned out to be, and we just like could not stop ourselves from that. Like 3 dudes in a trench coat. Like it was so funny.
Genuinely 3 dudes in a trench coat.
But like, I mean, we weren't like mad about the whole, like the concept of it. It was just an idea. There's just a funny like visual of them being like, and the winner is this woman, and then it's like 3 dudes pop
walked up.
Like, that's funny.
And also, what a way to announce.
The comedy was objectively good on that one.
Absolutely. What a choice.
Would, in order for this to get to that level, it'd have to be like someone insane who was actually the ghostwriter. Like, God, who would be the ghostwriter to make this funny? Ray Skywalker.
Dean Koontz or something. Nonsense.
Yes. James Patterson writing.
The one time he actually writes a book, and that's it. That's the one. Because he doesn't famously
does not write all of his books, which is kind of funny also.
But that would make this perfect, James Patterson.
Because he's been on a kick of doing like celebrity co-writing. He wrote that one with Dolly Parton and that one with Bill Clinton. He just didn't put his name on this one. Like, he forgot.
Of all the people that would forget, not this guy, but also.
Thank you for listening to The Ink Sink. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. You can listen to our show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. You can look at all of our book lists on bookshop.org, and you can find all of those links, including how to buy us a coffee on Ko-fi. And join our Discord on Ko-fi if you would like to. You can find all those links on our link tree, which is wherever you found this show. Thank you for listening.